Hey everybody, what's going on? It is James here with Crypto Common Sense, and I have your Bitcoin slash cryptocurrency update for December the 27th. Before I jump into today's content, please do me a huge favor. Go ahead and hit the thumbs up button on this video, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to click the bell icon to get notifications. So I know yesterday I didn't do a video, and some people probably thought, oh no, James got caught up in this YouTube craziness, this YouTube ban. I didn't. I was actually in the hospital last night. I had some weird stuff going on. My blood pressure was going kind of crazy, and my head and my neck were throbbing to the point that I thought I was going to pass out. So I went to the hospital, got CT scans, got x-rays, got EKG, blood work, the whole 9 yards. So trying to figure out what was going on. And come to find out that in my 30s, I have the worst case of disc degeneration that the doctor had seen. So not in ever, but in somebody in my age group. So that was kind of a bummer. And what I found out was I actually have a bulging disc in my neck that's pressing on my spinal canal. So it's not the spinal cord, it's just the spinal canal right now. So I have to go see a neurosurgeon. The reason I'm sharing that with you guys is because I have no doubt in my mind what caused that. Okay, he was telling me, like, he was very surprised that he couldn't believe it's as bad as it is in somebody who's only in their 30s. He said, you spend a lot of time sitting at a desk, and guys, I spend 14 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week at my desk because I'm a workaholic, right? Even when I got to the point in my business where I could semi-retire, I still spent most of my time at my desk working on passion projects. So I'm trading full time, and I'm doing these videos, and now I've got this trading course, and I still got my software business. I've got all these things, and that's what I do for fun. So I want to tell you guys, if you're like me and you're spending a lot of time at your desk, I would highly recommend that you check your posture and also look into a standing desk, because apparently this is going to cause me lifelong issues, which is not fun to hear. I'm not upset about it. It is what it is, right? People are out there dying of cancer. The worst thing I got to deal with is a little pain in my neck. I'm totally cool. But what I am saying is, it was totally preventable. So just kind of word of caution. So let's talk about the market. Let's talk about Bitcoin. Let's talk about what's going on. Truth be told, have not looked at a chart in over 24 hours. Okay, other than I just peeked at it when I was at the hospital. My short actually fell down. I was in a nice bit of profit on my short. And of course, it was a bummer. By the time I got home, it had actually bounced almost, $200. So that kind of sucked. So I'm still sitting in that short right now, kind of waiting to see what is going to happen. But there's some argument to be made for a bull case here. Okay, I'm looking at the daily chart right now, and we're just going to forget about the indicators for a second and just look at the chart itself. When this thing started to pull back like this, a lot of people on Twitter were saying, okay, 5,500, here we come, 5,500, here we come, which is a target that I had talked about in last week or maybe the week before, right? It is a valid target. On the bigger trend, if we draw a trend from back here down to here, we get something that looks like this, right? And I still think that's a valid trend, so we have to see, because the smaller time frames look more bullish. The larger time frame still looks pretty bearish. But when we zoom in, it's entirely possible that this is its own little micro trend here, right? Or at least the start of one, right? At first I was thinking this was what we were looking at and that we would go up here, but then it started to pull back quite a bit. And I thought, okay, well, maybe not. Maybe that's not what we're looking at. But if you notice, when it came back down, it's basically, found support at this same level, right around $7,044. Today's low is actually at $7,053, right? And now, of course, we've bounced. We're over $7,300. So I am now negative on a short that I was up on, which is a bummer. That just happened. But this almost looks to me like it's trying to break north, okay? And if so, then our target is actually $8,062, and that would wash out a lot of the bears who jumped on the bandwagon late and said, oh, okay, it's going to 5,500. Maybe it's not going there. That being said, in hindsight, it's real easy to draw these lines. Like, oh, okay, well, see, this is what happened, and this is how we should have traded that, and duh, what an obvious play that would have been. But that's one play. The bigger trend says 5,500. The smaller thing looks like it could go up to 8,000. And then there's other people that are going to say, no, you know what? This is actually what you're looking at right here, something like this, right? Well, you got a target of around 6,500, okay? Or maybe this ends up being the move where it comes down and this is our, first low and this pulls back maybe up to this area and then boom, now you target 6,800. So we don't really know, right? The trend extension tools just kind of give us some ballpark ideas of, hey, this is, what might be happening. This is what might not be happening. But I did find it interesting that it found such strong support. Again, this is a daily candle. This thing closed about an hour ago. Having a long tail like that, not that common to get a long tail and then get immediate downside the following day. Typically speaking, you get upside after a tail like that. Not always, right? Not always. But typically speaking, I mean, if we look back here, we had a long tail here, and boom, the very next day we had major downside. So again, it's not like I'm going to take a trade and say, oh, I'm going long just because of that tail, but more times than not, you're going to get some type of bounce after a tail. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. We're only an hour into today, but so far it's looking like the bulls are trying to show up. RSI, when we look at it on the daily, I don't really see anything that screams, bullish or bearish. Of course, we had, this nice upward sloping line. So I was hoping to see it come back down and test that, right? Not necessarily yesterday, but move down toward that 5,500 or move down toward that line. That did not happen, obviously. If we draw a trend line from the tops and try to get some kind of downtrend, it would have looked something like this, right? And if you look right here, it broke out of it, right? Which was back on December 18th. So that's kind of boom, done and over with, right? So I don't really have any trend lines that I can work off of with RSI. And when I'm in a spot like that, it makes it more difficult to kind of get a feel for what's going on. So I'm just going to, leave the daily for now, and we'll see what happens. This 74.26, that's a major line of resistance. If we break through that, it could signal that we're getting ready to have some serious upside, right? Up toward that $8,000 plus level. And of course, if it fails again, then it would just be more cliche downside. If we draw some fib levels on here, interestingly enough, the 61.8 on this little local move, it does line up pretty nicely with resistance. So there could be a short opportunity there. Don't have enough information right now to say, that I would do that. But there could be. So that's kind of what the daily looks like. Let's take a look at what we got here. Is this my 3-day? That's my 3-day. I'm looking for my weekly. Here's my weekly. Again, we want to trade closes. This is a perfect example of why. This morning, this was pretty far outside of what I think might be an ascending triangle. It was down, again, around 7,050, which was way down like in this area, right? So it had actually not just falling out of this, potential ascending triangle, it had also falling below the neckline of this double top. And if the week had closed down here, right, which obviously the week does not close for 2 more days, but if the week had closed down here, we would have had a confirmed double top. If you try to get greedy and front run that thing and say, okay, I'm shorting it now, boom, right? It's popped up $250, which when Bitcoin's sitting around 7,300, that's over 3%. Not good, especially if you're in some type of leverage position, right? You could really get blown out like that. So still inside the potential ascending triangle, and we still have to wait and see where this thing is going to close at on Friday. I was on my phone at the hospital trying to look at this, and it's kind of hard to see on a little mobile phone. But, I don't know what the RSI looked like this morning when this thing was tucked outside of this. Excuse me, I had to sneeze. Hopefully I edited that out. But I don't know what the RSI looked like when it, was down. It might have been tucked out of the bottom of this, or it might have just been touching it. I wouldn't have been surprised if it was actually touching that support, which, would have been a good idea to close my short had I been home. When I opened the short, the target was actually 5,500. That was the target for it, with a stop loss up around 7,600. But the way that it looked, even at the hospital, I was like, man, I wish I could close this right now. Because just the way things looked at that time with the RSI and the different things in the chart were saying to me that it was going to get some kind of bounce. And if I wanted to short it, I'd be able to short it up higher. But now, again, you can't control your health. And, sometimes you just bad luck, right? Wrong place, wrong time. So that's the weekly. If we take a look at that 3-day chart, and again, if we look at the RSI down here, this thing has been giving us all kinds of mixed signals because, over here it was way above this line of resistance, but then it came down and closed inside of it. Then over here it was above the resistance again, but then it came down and closed underneath it. Now, of course, this 3-day candle just started about 25 hours ago, and boom, it's up above it. But we don't know. Is it going to be up above it? Is it going to close up above it in 2 days? Or is it also going to come back down and tuck inside of it? I think this is very dangerous to trade right here. We have these really small ranges. You can see these opens and these closes are really just opening and closing in like about a $100 to $150 range, which is about a 2% range. So if you're scalping, it's possible for like a day trader. But if you're swing trading, it's not a whole lot to go on through here. So I'll wait for any kind of larger positions. Right, I've got the short open now. Which, like I said, I am down on that now that it's pumped up, which sucks, but that's life. But I'll keep it open unless we hit 7,600. That's where I'll get stopped out at. And if I don't get stopped out, then I'd like to ride it down to 5,500, hopefully. But as far as opening new positions, I'll watch this 3-day and kind of see what's going to happen here. This is different from what's happened in the past, right? We didn't get all this. I would almost call it consolidation, right? Along that line. And typically speaking, if you get consolidation, it's going to be a continuation type of move. So if you're moving down and something consolidates, usually you're going to expect more downside. And if you're moving up, like we were when we entered this consolidation, there's a good chance this is going to move up, right? There's a very good chance in my mind. And I'm a bear, so you got to remember that. And I still look at this and say, this looks bullish, right? This looks like it wants to do this, right? Where it goes up, has its little pullback, consolidates a bit, and then moves up toward this $8,300 area, or even higher, right? The 1.618 is up around 9,100, and of course, we all know, anybody that's ever watched my videos knows by now I'm a huge fan of that, $9,000 to $9,100 area being a key level of resistance that might get retested. Okay. So, and of course, 8,300, remember that's the 200-day moving average on the CME. That's right about where it's at. Okay. So we could get a bearish retest of that as well. And just in case you don't know what I'm talking about, just pull it up real quick. I'll show you what I'm talking about. If we take a look at the CME, there's the plain Jane chart here, which, by the way, this closed at 72.65, it looks like. So if this thing does move up, we're going to have a massive gap. But the 200-day moving average on this sucker is sitting at $8,366. So we could definitely get something like way up here like this, ping that thing for a bearish retest, and then have our downside. And again, like when you're looking at this and you're trading and things like that, it's always a good idea to consider what would be the most painful scenario, what would wash out the most people. Well, we all know that if this thing pumps up to $8,300, the bulls are going to go absolutely nuts. They're going to think that the bear market is over and that it's going to the next all-time high, yada, yada, yada. And maybe they're right. We don't know, obviously. But there's definitely going to be a lot of bulls buying on that type of rally, just like there was a bunch of bulls buying back on this rally. Okay? The bears, on the other hand, a lot of bears are going to be short down here, thinking we're going to 5,500. So this would wash out a lot of bears. It would trap a lot of bulls. And then if it moved down, it could move down without paying out all those shorts. And of course, it would be, just absolutely demolishing anybody who went long up here. Which, by the way, is exactly what happened back here. Right? This huge pump washed out a lot of bears. Right? A lot of people ended up getting smashed, closed out their shorts. A lot of bulls went long, and then boom, came down. Right? And that's just the way these markets like to do. They like to punish people. So that's kind of one scenario that I am keeping in the back of my mind. Ideally, I would like to see a pump, even though I'm short. It's a fairly small short. I would be okay getting stopped out of that. I'd be a little salty about the fact that I was up and couldn't close it because I wasn't home, but I'd be okay getting stopped out of that if it meant that I got a chance to open a bigger short up around this 200-day moving average, right? Or even possibly higher. I don't know that I really want it to go to $9,000 at this point. I did for a while, but the longer it takes to get there, the more bullish that would actually be, right? At first, if you go back up to retest it, it's like, okay, this is bearish. But if you consolidate and then go up to do that, it could end up being bullish structure, which is not something you'd want to short. So that's the CME chart. That's the 3-day chart. That's the weekly chart, all showing signs of potential bullishness. We just don't know yet. Remember, if you didn't catch the video on this ascending triangle, if you measure it out, it's around $600, $650, $700 roughly break out. So if it breaks out again, that gives it a target up around 81 to 8,200 bucks, which again lines up pretty nicely with that trend target. Okay, so I think that's a pretty fair rundown of Bitcoin. Let's take a look and see if there's anything I'm forgetting real quick. I want to keep this video fairly short because my neck is already throbbing like crazy. Let's see. Okay, one more thing. Somebody asked me about trend lines on Twitter, so I want to cover this real quick. So the problem with trend lines, and I love trend lines, so I'm not knocking trend lines in any way. I love them. They're awesome. I like trading them, but they're somewhat subjective, okay? So when this thing first started to move down, this was the first trend line, right? This is what it looked like. It was coming down. It came up, and I actually shorted this right here at 11,950. That's where I shorted Bitcoin. The first time in 2019 that I shorted Bitcoin was at 11,950. I had the stop loss set too tight, which cost me a ton of money. But essentially what happened was we just ignored this trend line and then went up through it, washed out the barriers, and then came back down, right? Bull trap. Over here, same thing. Over here, way, way above this line. So at what point do we say, hey, let's redraw this trend line? Okay, at some point we've got to redraw it. You know, it was touched here, it was touched here, it was basically respected here, it was respected through here. Right here it was respected, right here it was respected. Well, right here we're above it. So is that bullish, right? A lot of people were saying it was. Down here, bam, retest, bam, retest. This would be bullish, right? But then a lot of people, even the bulls, said, okay, we should probably redraw this. And this is our actual trend line right here. And so then they started talking about this trend line and how it was acting as support and resistance. Again, I agree. It was a trend line. It was acting as support. It was acting as resistance. But just because we broke above it doesn't mean that it's necessarily bullish and that we're going to the new highs. Because just like back here, we had the exact same thing. Get out of the way, trading view. We had the exact same thing right here. We broke above it and we came down and tested it and nothing. Okay. Also, you need to keep in mind that it can be drawn like this. Somebody could definitely draw this and say this is the actual trend line right here. In which case, if it comes up, where's that at right now? It's up around 8,800 bucks. Okay. The other thing to keep in mind is a lot of professional traders, non-crypto guys. Crypto, by the way, is one of the only places where I've ever seen people use wicks to draw trend lines. Unusual in my experience with talking to stock traders and when I read stock books. When I read, when I take any courses on stock trading, when I got started, I took a lot of stock trading courses, right? They always trade the closes. In fact, there's actually a saying, and I don't know the exact saying, I don't remember it off the top of my head, but basically something about amateurs trade wicks or professionals trade closes or something along those lines. So if we ignore the wicks and we just draw this from close to close, then our trend line looks drastically different. This is our trend line, which actually makes a whole lot more sense, right? You have wicks above it here, you have wicks above it here, you have wicks above it here, you had a wick above it here. But for the most part, it's been, like the Great Wall of China, completely respected and unbreakable, okay? So that's probably the actual trend line. And if you look there, it's up around 8,700 bucks right now, okay? I still firmly believe that we're inside of a triangle. Now, which triangle? That's tough to say, right? But if we move this line up here, obviously this was a triangle. We broke out of it. We came up for a bearish retest right through here. This was an obvious place to be shorting Bitcoin. And then, boom, dumped. Okay. Then, I think we were in this triangle, right? Up, consolidating, down, up, consolidating, broke out of it, come up for a bearish retest, another bearish retest. And this looks very, very similar to what happened right through here before it dumped, okay? So keep that in mind because back here, you could have been bullish too. Back here, you could have been saying, okay, this trend looks like it's going to take us up to the next level. This is very, very similar to what happened back here. So we definitely do want to keep that in mind, okay? The volume right now, it's not screaming bull, okay? Even though the charts, I see some bullish patterns that could potentially set up. Look at the volume and how low it is. A weak bounce, okay, a weak rally is not a sign of a new bull market. What's a sign of is a retest. So let me show you that real quickly, and then I think we'll probably wrap up. Well, shoot, I actually went and looked on Twitter. I was trying to find a chart. I actually posted a chart of this on Twitter, and I couldn't find it, the Wyckoff logic. But essentially, guys, I'm not sure where we're at in the Wyckoff logic part, But what I was thinking was maybe back here, I'll show you a picture of this in just a second, but back here when this was all going on, I was thinking that this was our break and this was our sign of weakness, and then up here we had this last point of supply before moving further down. And unfortunately for me, I ended up abandoning that theory because the guy that actually owns the Wyckoff Institute was saying that he disagreed. And I was like, oh, well, he probably knows Wyckoff better than I do, obviously. He was saying that it was a Wyckoff spring that was going to keep going up. Yeah, wrong, right? That's why you don't listen to other people. You got to trade your own plan and, not let this stuff influence you. But the more I look at it, this was a high volume pump back here, and that's what made me a little bit nervous. And so when he came out and said that it wasn't what I thought, yeah, he's probably right. There is a lot of volume. What you want to see on a retest if during Wyckoff distribution is you want to see low volume rallies, right? Like this. There's more selling volume than there's buying volume, right? Just not a lot of buying volume down here. Like even right here, fairly weak, okay? So if this is indeed, if this was actually the sow, which is the sign of weakness, very possible this is actually the last point of supply. What happens after that in Wyckoff logic is you get your next down move, right? Okay, well I grabbed the line, but I meant to draw a line. You get your next down move, right? Could look something like this. You typically get some kind of weak bounce, and then you get your full out capitulation, okay? Very, very possible that is actually what's happening. And that would line up really well with the, the market cycle meme of, this being denial right through here. So what I'm talking about with all that is I'm talking about this right here, right? Move down, up, down, up. What does that look like? That looks an awful lot like what we're putting in right now. Again, this isn't ever going to look exact. Like all this back here doesn't look exact either. But starting to wonder a little bit if maybe this isn't where we're actually at. And, we're getting ready to enter phase E. Can't really trade that, right? I can't look at that. It's okay, well, I'm going to short it because I think we're in phase E. It's more of just a big picture. This might be what's happening kind of thing. Something that I keep in the back of my mind. As far as whether I'm bullish on the longer term, and by longer term I mean, like 6 to 12 months, I don't know anymore, guys. I really don't know anymore. We have been essentially in a bear market with a bull rally for 2 years now, right? It's been 2 years. That's a really long time. I still think that we don't know what's going to happen with how the futures are going to really affect this market. I think we're going to have to wait and see what happens leading up to this halving. And does the halving, make the bull's dream come true? Is it this event that skyrockets the price again or starts to skyrocket the price? Or is it this event where people are thinking it's going to pump the price, but when it doesn't, it's going to cause full-out capitulation and send Bitcoin tumbling? I still think that it could go either way. But over the next, 3 months, 6 months, I'm definitely not bullish, right? Over the next 3 months for sure. We have not put in any bullish structure. We haven't put in a double bottom like some people are claiming. This is not a double bottom, right? There is no, there's no bullish structure. I mean, I just don't know what else to say. I mean, it's really black and white issue, right? It's either there or it's not. And if we can get this ascending triangle to break out, that's bullish structure. But it's not bullish structure in the sense that it's a trend reversal, right? It doesn't necessarily mean the trend is over. Because this could send us up to 8,300. That would still be a lower high, right? And then it could just go down and make a lower low after that. We need to start putting in higher highs and higher lows before we can say, okay, we have a trend reversal and it's confirmed, right? So for example, a close above 9,500, you would probably be crazy to think that we're still in a bear market if we close above 9,500 bucks, right? I understand that's a big jump. I understand that people want to buy at 7,200, not 9,500 if it's going to go back up. But if you're buying at 7,200 and it goes down, you call it a falling knife. So all that being said, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. Please remember that I am literally some guy sitting in a spare bedroom, so nothing in the video is financial advice. Nothing in the video is trade advice. You should always do your own due diligence and seek out professional investment advice before making any type of investment in cryptocurrency. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure and give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to check the description for links where you can follow me on TradingView, Twitter, where you can join my free Facebook group, and where you can join my paid trading course if you'd like to learn how to trade. This is James with Crypto Common Sense. Trade safe.